Hi guys, I'm Katie Room from patriots.com, where I review indie sci-fi and fantasy books. You guys, anyone who watches my channel regularly will of course recognize Michael Kane from our book clubs, but he is better known as the author of a now completed sci-fi western series, After Moses. And today we'll be talking about his new book, The Witch of Hobomock Pass, and revealing the cover. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for joining me, Michael.
Well, thank you for having me.
I see Patrick already in the chat. 8:23 p.m. Thank you for being here, Patrick. Apologies to everybody. I will mangle your names unless they're simple, like Patrick. You'll notice that I didn't say his entire handle. Retro Fish. Nice to see the Lego streets in context on the shelving, Michael. They are nice. I like your streets.
Second one's getting started up top. Some of the old Legos getting kicked off the shelf.
Nice. You gotta rotate through. We've been rearranging in our house, and I've had to move several of my Lego sets, thinking about, should I swap Rivendell? Should I put something else
I'm still
there?
very jealous of Rivendell, so that's the nicest Lego set I'll probably never own. It's so nice.
I love the colors of it, and it's Rivendell, you know. All right, so I'm just gonna jump right in.
Let's do it.
How does it feel to be done with After Moses?
Very good. It was 7 years of my life, just over 1 million words. I think it's like 1,005,000 words. Definitely the biggest like professional project, goal, creative, long-term thing in my now 40 years. I mean, that was most of my 30s. That's the way that I look at it, is After Moses took me most of my 30s to finish. But it's done. It's very, very cool to see a very long-term story come to completion. There were scenes and places imagined within the first week or two of really putting these ideas down that took me 7 years to get to. Right. It's like, and some things changed. Some of the context and some of the framing changed a little along the way once I had the context of hundreds of thousands of other words to shift meanings and intentions and things like that a little bit. But to finally get to those things and see those things that I'd been daydreaming about for years and years and years was just really great. I'm very happy with the way the ending turns out. Obviously we're in an era where everybody's skeptical of stories and endings and big endings flopping, but I think it turned out okay.
I can't weigh in on the ending yet. I haven't read it. I have been saving it for a rainy day when I just need something that is a comfort read, because I know it's going to deliver.
There you go.
So I apologize that I can't confirm or deny that it ended well.
Well, I don't have any hate reviews yet, so that's a plus.
Everything I've heard online is good. So your new story is The Witch of Hobomock Pass. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so technically it's Hobomock Pass, but that's okay. I know everybody's going to say Hobomock. It's okay. It's okay. This came about a couple of years ago, really before I even started Evensong, from just some thinking I was doing, and I put out on Twitter asking what American fantasy looked like, and it went pretty viral in our circles, and there were a lot of really good responses because people took it in very different directions. Some people went to the obvious American writers, things like Conan, and there is some American coding in that we could probably work up, or other writers like Burroughs, which I think is an excellent, Princess of Mars, I think is an excellent answer for several reasons. And then there were some others that were actually more Americana coded, things like there's a an Orson Scott Card series I've never read, Alvin Maker. It's apparently Americana coded. But it was a really, really just fun thread because, of course, people were listing all sorts of things I'd never heard of, but also just discussing really what would make American fantasy rather than Europe. Because most fantasy as a genre that we're used to, obviously there are exceptions, but most of it's very European in coding. You have knights and armor and dragons and things to which there's no real analog in the American lexicon or experience. And so I started thinking about, even before I wrote Evensong, like what is American fantasy? And so that's kind of what led here. Just thinking about it over a few years, uh, even more than the trappings of American things and places. I was thinking about the what is the American myth? You know, what are like the deep cultural myths that make us who we are? And there's a few of them, and I definitely am going to try and to tap into those. But of course, the main one is that is easy to talk about in fiction is the myth of the frontier. You know, it's the place you can go, you can leave the safety of civilization, you can go out beyond the borders. It's going to be hard, it's going to be dangerous. People and wildlife and weather might try and kill you, but you can make a way, you can carve out a little slice of civilization, and you can tame the frontier. You know, and that is a quintessential American myth, and it first comes about in fiction and the Western, you know, which the genre of the Western.
Okay, Michael, I
Oh,
definitely want to dive into this for sure. But can we back up and just talk
sure.
like simple, like what is the
Sure.
story?
So I started thinking, yeah. Sorry. So I
That's
started,
totally fine.
I started, I had a bunch of different directions I was going to go, or thinking about going, right? And the thing that really, really suddenly made everything click was the idea that on this continent, all the compasses point west. They don't point north; they point west, and that was a mythologizing a mythologizing of the myth of the frontier. You know, that really just made me go, that's what I need, and a bunch of things start to fall into place. So, the Witch of Hobomock Pass takes place in a. It's not an alternate history, so it's not taking place in our world. It's a full secondary world. But as Fred Asphere has had a chance to read it, and his comment when he, like 3 paragraphs in, he says, "Oh, it's another America." And yes, it is another America. It's set in the Republic of Colombia. Uh, it's just past a war, and the General Nathaniel Lockridge is been tasked by the president with opening the passes going west, the passes that were closed in the war. And his 12-year-old son John is going to be with him, and they're going to head off into the mountains with a company of soldiers and tradesmen and camp followers, and are going to run afoul of the things that go bump in the night. Which these first 3 books are very Appalachian coded. I've got to say Appalachian because that's where the artist is from, and we can talk about that later because that's what he would say probably. They're very Appalachian coded, and you know what are the stories in the Appalachians, right? They're all dark and strange. The folk tales are dark and strange, and shapeshifters and horrible things and witches and things like that. So, um, the first 3 books are going to form a little mini trilogy, and these are shorter books, by the way. After Moses they're not door stoppers, but they're pretty big. They're 150 to 180,000 word books. This is like 53,000. So the goal is for them to be shorter, little pulpier, but deliberate snapshots, love letters to the American frontier and the American experience per se. So these first 3 are all going to be Appalachian coded. And so the first one, the Witch of Hobomock Pass, is an ode to the scary Appalachian folk tales and the things that go bump in the night.
Awesome. So would you say that the new direction, like compared to After Moses, like you have this new story, but you're in a new setting, in a new genre, would you say that all sort of came out of your thinking about American fantasy, or was there some other inspiration?
This was that was the main thing. Um, that was definitely the main thing. There was some pieces and little things along the way. Part of it also is just the desire for a palate cleanse and write something totally different. You know, I've promised everybody that there will not be a sequel to After Moses, right? Those characters, their stories are done, right? I do leave some minor plot threads open, you know, but if I wanted to return to writing science fiction in that setting, we're talking it'd be a 500, 1,000 years down the line, like a far science fiction, a far future instead of a near one. So maybe I'll go back to that, or I'll write a couple books of that, and then say of this, and say maybe I want a palate cleanse, and I go back and write about a very spoiler thing that anyone in the chat who's read it will know what I'm talking about. A very spoiler thing, but if I get there, great. For now, we're writing about muskets and monsters and things like that.
What was it like making that switch, fantasy versus sci-fi?
Not hard, because I write the same way regardless. I did more research for this 50,000 page 50,000 word book than any of the single After Moses novels, and it wasn't even close.
Wasn't even close.
It wasn't even close. I mean, because I was constantly going, I would write something and I'd look at, I'd read it and I'd say, that sounds really modern. Why does that sound modern? Oh, there's a turn of phrase there. So I'd go, how old is the phrase? Da, 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 da. 1921 is the earliest recorded usage. Darn it. Okay, what's a 1770s version? And I'd come up with, like one thing was when someone's being followed, you know, it's very common in fiction today to say somebody's being tailed, right? Well, that's very modern. That's 1870s, I think. Late Victorian fiction is what I found out. And so someone says that their trail was dogged.
Sure.
You know, so there was a lot of stuff like that as I was writing, I was like, that's not right. Or you have a military camp in the wilderness, and where do you keep all the horses in the camp? Well, obviously not in the camp, because horses make a mess of things. But what do you call where that is? I was like, I'm sure I've read that at some point. I had. It's called the picket line.
Sure.
But I just couldn't place that. And so there was a lot of very little things that I had to look up along the way. For muskets, it's like I was reading about the Revolutionary War, their firing drills, right? What's the exact sequence of events to fire a musket? Because I've never had the pleasure of shooting a black powder flintlock weapon, right? You know, I just don't have one of those sitting around. So there was a lot of reading. Oh, so Retrofish is talking in the chat. He's actually read his advanced copy already that went out yesterday afternoon.
Nice.
So
I'm a significant portion through mine.
So yeah, lot of research. One of the big ones, and I'll go ahead. I think somebody even asked about this in one of your questions, but there's a jacktail. Have you by chance made it to the jacktail?
I have, yes.
Okay, that's a real brand of Appalachian folktale. They were preserved orally. They were recorded by a folklorist, I think, in the 1920s, and they're collected in this book. And that was a really important book for me to read, because it let me pick out a bunch of the Scots-Irish dialect things that one of the Mr. McKee speaks in a very specific way and uses some specific words. Now I tone it way down. I tone it to like 20% dialect, right? And just use a few markers. But that was a great read. And then, you know, I recreate a new jacktail in the very similar style. The jacktails are, the Appalachian jack is descended from the English jack, most famous in the United States for Jack and the Beanstalk is the most famous jacktail. And there's an Appalachian version of that story too. But Jack ends up killing a lot of giants in stories, so I had to have a giant, and so it was fun. It was a lot of fun. There's going to be some people that look at that and go, "Why did he include that?" But it was important to me, so I'm going to defend it.
I enjoyed it. I I felt like it fit.
That's
And it
I was hoping that it would.
one of the things about like tales within a tale, stories within a story, is sometimes you come upon them and you're like, okay, we're not going to be moving forward with the actual plot. We got to go down this rabbit trail. That it didn't feel like that. It felt natural. It felt like it belonged, and it was fun.
Well, it like I said, it was an important part of local flavor. Like I said, to try and catch some of that Scots Irish influence. So that was one of the biggest bits of research was reading the Jack Tales and trying to
Fun.
absorb some of that so I could reproduce it.
All right. I would like to look at art. We're not going to look at
Yay!
the cover quite yet. We're going to start with
I can wait.
some some stuff that you've already shared online. Would you tell us a little bit about this one?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and tell you about my artist. Is
Yes,
Jordan
please.
Holt. Uh, uh, I found him on Twitter a couple years ago, and then we just kind of had a conversation. Oh, I don't know, 9 months ago or so that kind of we both wanted to get a chance to work with each other at some point because I think he'd read After Moses, and I picked up one of his comic books. He has this series. It's kind of this comedic retelling of the myth of Theseus.
Oh,
You know, there's 2 volumes out. And actually, he just had a Kickstarter back in March for the third. He hasn't shipped them yet. Um, so I'd pick that up because I liked his art, and so he was a pretty natural choice because as you look on his profile on Twitter, and he says he's from Appalachia, right? You talk to him, and he says he has traces his family back 200 years in the area. So I was like, this is the right guy to do this. And it worked out really well. He teaches art at a college in Eastern Tennessee, but he was planning on taking this next year off to actually try and make money as an artist. And so the timing worked out that basically he finished that semester and turned around and got to work on this project right here.
cool.
So on the left side, you see the pencil rough, the early version there, and it's of some of the main characters. That's John Lockridge, and then Joseph McKee, who's very much your Daniel Boone sort of mountain man, the Hamley hunter that they hire for the expedition. He's the one that might know a little more about what's going on when something strange is happening. And then on the right side, you've got the final. All of the artwork for Witch of Hobomock Pass is going to be real physical art that's done in pen and ink on a like 16 by 10 page. So it's big, so that gives lots of detail. I told him that something that was influential to me as a kid. Do you remember the Great Illustrated Classics?
Oh, yes.
I use those as kind of a reference point of a little bit more old-fashioned style character. And I mean, I think he's kind of barking up the right tree there. Really happy with how that turned out. That's the chapter 1 illustration. I am committed to doing 10 illustrations. I'm going to have one for each chapter. A few of them will be half pages. All of them will be whole pages. And depending upon how the Kickstarter goes, I might do up to 2. I would like to have a half page and a whole page illustration for each. So some of the whole page illustrations will be better as like character scenes, and some of the half pages will be better at distant scenery, distant scenes where we're zoomed back further.
Nice.
Just be better at some different things. So he's actually started the second one today. I've got the pencil sketch for chapter 2. I looked through which chapters I wanted potentially I could release during the Kickstarter so people could see, have more of a scene, and then which ones I'm not going past this point because this is getting more towards spoilers. Right. There's certain things I won't show until you get the book in your hands, because I just think that's the best way to go for a story that's a little creepy.
Yeah.
It's like Jaws. It's creepier when you can't see it. Let's be real. That's how all creepy stories work.
Right. Well, I think even in this, you can see some of the things that fans of After Moses are going to appreciate. Uh, One of the things that I know some of the readers that I've talked to really like about it is the father figure
Hmm.
and growing son. Uh, Matthew and Davy had a really uh, inspiring, I feel, relationship. And watching Davy sort of overcome his youth and become a man uh, resonated with a lot of your readers. I believe that's why his
Uh,
book is one of the favored.
oh, I think so too. It's funny because I'm pretty convinced that. I mean, I tried to make Davy a stinker in After Moses when I introduced him. Like, he's pretty unlikable. He's very disagreeable with all the other characters. He whines a lot. And so I'm really proud that a lot of people tell me he's their favorite character by the end of the series, that I've managed to basically turn him into a whining boy, from a whining boy into a man. John here is very different. He's the son of a general. He grew up in the capital city on a manor, and so he's already more educated, but he's a soft city boy. He's a soft city boy thrown into the wilds. So his growing up will be a little different. This first book definitely functions as a coming of age tale for John. So yeah, there's going to be some. If you like Davy and Matthew, I think you're going to like where John goes. And
Nice.
I'm not intending this book for a younger audience. Like I'm saying, I'm writing for 12-year-olds, right? I'm not doing that.
Right.
But I absolutely want this to be a book that a 12-year-old would see and go, "Oh, that's cool." And time passes, and Davy and John grows up, and lives his life. And that's something that they can experience. And that's another reason that I really wanted these illustrations too, is we live just in such this visual world now. It's like, how do you compete in the eyes of a 12-year-old with Minecraft and Skibbity Toilet, right? So it's like, well, I'm going to have some really cool visuals in there too. So
Nice.
I want this to be the book that people, they buy it, they love it, and then they buy a copy for their 12-year-old nephew, right? That's really what I want here.
Nice. And of course, we can see the frontier.
Mm-hmm.
Feels very early America.
Yeah, definitely. He did a lot of research on just layouts of stockade forts and weapons and clothing. Another cool thing is Jordan read the book a couple months ago, one of the earlier drafts of his own accord. He asked to read it, and he didn't need much direction at all on characters and things like that, because he read it and he knew it, and he looked up clothing styles for what would a 12-year-old boy be wearing. Well, he's wearing the tricorn and a wool jacket very similar to the soldiers, just with some different trimmings. So it was very neat that he really dove into the details like that himself.
Yeah, that's great. It's awesome that reading the book, you don't need the pictures in order
Right.
to see it. And the fact that the pictures grow out of that so naturally is wonderful. Would you like to talk a little bit about your takeaways from the American
Oh yeah.
fantasy discussion?
Well, so again, I was talking about the frontier. And the frontier in American fiction first comes about in the Western. And the Western as a story genre is already coming apart before the West is done, if that even makes sense. Um, the last of the West isn't really closed until the very beginning of the 1900s, per se. And there's already proto-Western stories. And by the 1920s, it's a major story, major genre. and then again, and then you get A Princess of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. And Edgar Rice Burroughs, under already in science fiction already existed, but I think Edgar Rice Burroughs really is the one that really turns it into a frontier, right? John Carter starts in Arizona fighting Indians. I think they're trying to make a prospect or a claim, and then ends up in a cave that teleports him from the red deserts of Arizona to the red deserts of Mars. Right. And he's like the first to combine those two, the science fiction and the Western. And of course, that's the route I was already on, was the combination of the two. And so you talk about, was it much of a change? Well, yes, but it's also, there's a lot of things that aren't necessarily that much of a change. I mean, there's obviously a lot more politics in After Moses as the story grew, but writing about those little backwater towns and guns and things like that, there absolutely was a lot of similarity. Ooh, McKee's gun. I should talk about that at some point too. But yeah, so the again, like I said, that American myth of the frontier, that's really what I want to explore. As someone else that read it, they said, they said this is Manifest Destiny, the series. So I was like, yeah, a little bit of that. There's
I was going to
definitely
mention Manifest Destiny. So I
and
think
that's
one of the lines that the president says, I was like,
mhm.
oh.
I stay away from using the term on purpose, right? The exact term. And Manifest Destiny has kind of this interesting course through American history of the term being deliberately crafted as a positive propaganda thing before eventually, being turned against and made this negative colonizer type situation. And and of course that's something I'm going to have to wrestle with in writing is natives, and that's something I'm convinced that far more writers across different mediums have not figured out how to get right than have figured out how to get right, because you fall into two equal and opposite errors. And the first one is is your 1930s and 40s just making Native Americans and Indians cannon fodder and enemies just to shoot, and then your second one is turning them into the noble savages that do no wrong, when you got a really just complicated history of stuff. I mean, it's everything. Some of the research. Go ahead.
I got a kid's book from my dad. He just retired. He was a fifth grade teacher for over 30 years. And it was like a novelization, sort of. It wasn't quite novel length, of Lewis and Clark. So it was story based as opposed to, those nonfiction books with all the pictures. It had one artist through the whole thing, and it was prose. And in talking about William Clark's life, he had positive experiences with Indians growing up. And then as a young man was also, pitted against them. They were his enemies. And the book did just a very, very graceful, he respected them as a people.
Right.
But he fought them with courage, right? Like it was not, it's not they're the bad guys all the time. It's not that they're the good guys all the time. It's not that they as a people were to be respected in both instances.
Probably the writer that gets it the best, who's the most well known, was writing in the 1820s, James Fenimore Cooper, most famous for Last of the Mohicans. I started it, but the copy I got on Amazon was terrible and had tiny print.
Oh no!
And so it died on the vine. I'm gonna get another copy and read it. But he was someone else. He was someone that was living that exact thing. the good and the bad and the ugly of both sides and the good of the both sides. Basically, there's it's no different than any two meeting of two cultures at any other given point in history, all the good and the bad. Um, we love to throw around the word genocide when 90% of the deaths were from plague. From smallpox specifically was the one that just wiped out everyone. And that's obviously a monumental human tragedy that no one was responsible for, that just simply happened. The estimation is that on U.S. soil in the last 400, about 400-year period, European descended, Americans and pre-Americans killed around 50,000 natives in conflict. Natives killed around 50,000 Americans in conflict, and natives killed around 50,000 other natives in conflict. So that's something that'll be something for book 2. So
Sure.
that'll be and that's already something I've set up in book 1 in that chapter 4, that little meeting with Anakana from the Anaquoni. So we'll get there. We'll get there in the second book. For now, it's the things that go bump in the night. Book 2 is conflict and alliance with natives, and then book 3 is starvation and the terror of winter.
These are all very, very standard American.
They
foundational.
They are, but that's kind of the goal of what I'm setting out for. Is, like I said, these snippets of these American things, but also where the folk tales are true. So things might be a little weirder. Also, Jessica Barberi. I don't know if that's how you say her last name. She read it for me. She's another author, but she read it for me for checking my horses.
Nice.
And I made quite a few changes to one scene based upon her advice. So she checked my horses because I'm not a horse guy. I have very little experience with horses, and I didn't want to go into it with just this is what I've seen in movies, so this is how horses must be. Well, nope.
You got to get a horse girl to talk to you about horses.
I got a horse girl, and she was very gracious to read it for me.
One other thing that I wanted to say about the American mythos, particularly relating to the frontier and to manifest destiny, sort of, is how it stands in contrast to the very, very much English Golden Age myth, which see most famously in Lord of the Rings. You're in a time of decline. The best days are sort of behind us. There's ruins of great monuments. Great kingdoms are in their lesser stages. Whereas with the frontier myth, everything's in front of you. And it's not just you're going out to conquer it, but you're going out to take it and keep it, to maintain it, to make it better and improve it.
Well, that's why we're going to get to Mars first.
Absolutely.
There's no way anyone was ever going to beat the Americans to Mars. We were going to get there first, no matter what. Because we've run out of frontier. So someone was going to go insane and figure out how to get there.
Yep. What about heroism? Because I don't know, I've talked about this before. I don't know if you've ever gone and read it. The myth of the American superhero.
I've heard you talk a little bit about that.
It proposes that distinctly American archetypes of heroes, right? They come in and they protect this idyllic community that's threatened by an outside evil. And then once they have rebuffed it or defeated it, they either leave or fade into obscurity. They don't become integrated. And
you can
the superhero, right?
The wandering gunman,
right? But the Western is where
the Western is a little bit of that too.
What would you say? I feel like the frontier is a little bit different. Like early frontier is a little bit.
I think it's a little.
I think
it's definitely a little different. Yeah, I don't. the superhero archetype, you can see how it comes about from Americanism, because there's the idea that I have to be the one, I have to take care of myself, right? I have to be the one to take care of my family, my community. I cannot rely necessarily on a government to take care of these things. And so I must become the man that can do what he has to do. So you can absolutely see how this that billows over and out of it. Um, but you're right. I don't think for an Appalachian stories that it's really quite there yet, especially because everybody was huddling together in forts, in the middle of nowhere, fending off Indian attacks, and the French even earlier than that. So I don't think it's really quite developed yet. But that's interesting. I hadn't thought about how those combine. And okay. So here's another. Okay, here's another idea that gets a tiny touch of development late in this book, and is something I've really thought about, is that part of the American myth is, where does a nation needs a story about, um it needs a national narrative on its justification to wield power. So for the most part in European countries, through quite a lot of years, there was the idea of the divine right to rule, that the kings were given the right to rule by God, and so therefore they had to be just and behave in a certain way in order to lead their people. And that is a functional national myth that gives purpose to people, to the leadership. It sets expectations of how leaders are supposed to act. If they are ordained by God to rule their people, if they have that divine right, then they should be acting in certain ways. Now obviously it doesn't always work out that way, but that's national myths are more of a narrative than always necessarily descriptive of what actually happens, right? So flip that around. What does that mean for the US? Where is what does the European divine right become in the US? Well, it becomes this stark individualism that every man himself has that responsibility. It passes from the king to the individual. And something I've been thinking about as a story wise, we Washington is our greatest myth, or as a character, as a person, as a man, is definitely our greatest myth. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Like if you read his life and what he did and what he accomplished, and also the fact that like he was never injured. There are multiple coats that he has that have
Holes in
musket
his
balls
coat
through
and
them. Yes.
yeah.
And he was never injured. So there's this very mythic quality that surrounds him. And the expectation from the European powers was, when England surrendered and Washington is victorious, the expectation was, under the European mindset, is now he's either going to become a military tyrant and rule his new kingdom, or he's going to set up a dynasty and be a king, right? And that's what George's expectation was. Now we've kind of mythologized it further and say, well, he was offered kingship. He was never offered kingship. There is a single letter of a colonel that wrote to him suggesting that that's something he should do, and Washington rejects it. But Washington didn't want to do that. Oh, there's another anecdote, and it's believed to be credible. We can follow the line of who said it. That basically, that King George said that when he was told that by a man, that an American that was in England told him that he believed that Washington would not become a king, but would desire to return to farm life, to his farm. And there's credible source that says that George says, if that's true, then he's the greatest man alive, or something like that. Right? Just this wildly complimentary thing to say about your enemy.
I'm sure he meant it in a dismissive way, like
I'm
it couldn't possibly.
it's possible. It's possible. But Washington does is, he really does just want to go back to being a farmer. And so he resigns his commission as supreme commander of the Continental Army. He quotes Cincinnatus, and he uses the analogy of Cincinnatus. Now, Cincinnatus was a Roman leader during the Republic era, like 400 BC, something like this. Basically, Rome calls upon him to lead. He was farming. He was obviously a civic leader too, but he was called up. He was installed as dictator of Rome because that's something that they did. Gave someone absolute power in a crisis, and he wields absolute power over the Roman Republic for like 19 days. Solves the crisis, and then turns around and goes back to farming. So Washington invokes Cincinnatus as his inspiration for saying, "No, I turn and go home." So I think symbolically and narrative wise, there's this important little this little nexus that bends around Washington as the man who could have been king, who perhaps more than any other American deserved to be king, that says, "No, the divine right doesn't belong to me." He was a thorough believer in republicanism, and so the divine right passes to his people instead, who therefore now the responsibility to uphold the laws of God and man belong to each individual American. And that's why you get, that plays right along with some of the founding fathers that talk about how I forget which one. It might be Hamilton, but there's basically a quote that says that America is a nation for a moral people, right? And the idea that, well, when we stop being moral, then this wonderful experiment, sometimes people say, well, is going to stop functioning, because when that divine right falls upon an immoral people, just like an immoral king, the whole thing falls apart. So yeah, that's another interesting myth I think I'm going to try and play with is the change of European divine right to American individual. And that plays what you were talking about with the myth of the superhero, how you have the man who has the divine right of God to stand up and defend his people and his home. And yeah, it's fascinating. I'll have to think more about that.
Yeah. It's a
Chasing all sorts of philosophical rabbits here.
right. Yes, very much so. Well, and that's what ends up happening when you talk about American fantasy.
Exactly.
There's a lot of threads to it, I think.
Yeah, there are, and I hope I do some of them justice. Now, this isn't a particularly dense work or a political work or a philosophical work, but I do have a few epigraphs mixed into the story that kind of provide a little more insight into some changes between that world and this world, and some things like that. So,
All right. Okay. Next image. Still not the cover. Sorry, guys. This is the maps.
Okay, so if you get a hardback, the maps are going to be printed in papers. When you open up a hardback, those white pages on the left and the right.
Nice.
These are going to be printed in papers instead of just white pages.
Fun.
Right? So, yes, so I have my Republic of Colombia map on the left. You do not know how many months it took me to come up with sufficiently American sounding names. Colonial American name. Okay, research. We talk about research. Here we go. Colonial American names are a smorgasbord of English, Dutch, tiny bit of French and Delaware.
Probably more French as you go north.
Yeah. Well, I was just meaning in the state name specifically. Sure. And then Algonquin family Indian names that have been heavily anglicized. So that's Connecticut, Massachusetts. And so that's what we have. We have Henrietta in the South, which is definitely English. New Halswick is very English. South Mariana, North Mariana, definitely riffing off of North and South Carolina. Then we have Kitimac, which is Algonquin, and I do not remember the translations on these. They are highly anglicized, though, as we do. You morph things into your own language. We have New Brooklyn, which is basically Brooklyn, but a more Dutch spelling, which Brooklyn is Dutch. We have Quinnicut, which is from the same word that we get Connecticut, but just a different Anglicization. The first half is actually more accurate to Algonquin, and then I drop a syllable. There's Osterset, which is English. Osterfield, I think, is the village that the Pilgrims came from. And so I have a little reference there to the Pilgrims that they came from. Is it Osterfield? Now I've forgotten. It's been a few months. Osterfield, yeah. So I have Osterset. And then we have Manipog up there, which is another Algonquin one. So that was a lot of work. The maps were done by, you might see him on Twitter as Map Effects. Josh Stolars is his name. He did them. We kept going back and forth and finding more period accurate ways to do things, from the shading to the little cartouche up in the top. The font is based on a font that Benjamin Franklin used in his newspaper. Caslon, I think, was the name of the font. It's from the mid 1800s. Franklin used it in his newspapers. Even down at the bottom, you can't read it here, but there's that little script down there, is how maps, in the language that maps were credited in the day, how they're assigned. And you can see my compass there that points west. North is important, but west is bigger, since that is which way the compass points in the Republic of Colombia.
I just had like kind of a random thought about that. It's almost like Orson Scott Card's "The enemy is down." The enemy's base is down. It's like for Americans, west.
A friend of mine drew the first sketch, and it was kind of that Chesapeake Bay type area that you see that has Federal City and Cape Oliver there in the middle. And he actually had the interpretation to rotate the whole thing where west was facing up. Oh. And that was really interesting. I decided against it, though, just for ease of use, but I can see that being done. And I was really tempted to really do that, but I decided against it. The other page is kind of a local regional one of where most of the action takes place. And Josh actually had the idea while he was making it to turn it into like a journal page where there's like scribblings and writings about things and sketches of different things seen. You have the horned serpents down there, which are a big critter in a lot of Algonquin, I think, and Iroquois mythologies. Does not appear in this book, so don't expect to see it in this book. But we may see a horned serpent later. But that was his idea. You know, that's one of the most fun things about working with an artist, is when they have input and you're like, oh, that's great. Yes, that's exactly the right thing to do. So yeah, so these will be in pages. You open up the book, one will be on the left, one will be on the right, and they'll also be in the back as well.
Nice.
Because I am getting a small offset print run. These will not be print on demand books. I am getting a few hundred of them at once. I sell from my website, so I'll have plenty left over to sell from that. So they will be sewn bindings, not glued. They will have printed end pages, and the matte covers for indies that Katie hates, it will not be the indie matte. It will be the proper offset matte process, which is a completely different inking process.
I'm so excited.
Me too. So, there'll be one more little. There's one more Cadillac upgrade I'm going to do, but you'll see that when we get to the cover render.
One of the other things I wanted to ask about with the maps, in our interview that we did, when was that? Was that for book number 5?
It was about 2 years ago. It was for Sanctum's release. That's a little over 2 years ago. We
talked a lot about real world details that you used to craft your setting, in which then influenced the plot. Did anything like that happen?
Not geography wise.
Sure.
Because I wanted to be able to be flexible with geography and create my own geography and places and not have somebody saying, "Where's Hobomock Pass on a map?" Well, there's not a Hobomock Pass. It's that's like the old when you're watching a movie and somebody references a Kazakhstan, it's usually a stan. It's some ambiguously West Asian uh, uh, slash Middle Eastern country that doesn't exist because we need somebody that we're not going to offend.
Sure.
You know, that always kind of makes me chuckle a little when you make up fake places in a real place. So I wanted a complete clean break that I could do what I wanted. But that said, ecology and geology and all that stuff is correct. So there's some travel scenes where they're talking about as elevation changes, the different kinds of trees are changing and things like that. And so that plays those play into the story a little bit. I'm like, okay, they're at a low altitude and they're down in a valley and it's near a river. Okay, what kind of trees are going to be down there? Oh, there could be a hemlock tree here, so we're going to go with a hemlock. Or there's tulip trees, and those are really tall ones, so that's perfect for this for someone to be buried under a tulip tree sort of thing. So there's a lot of real world stuff that happens, but not exact places in this one,
Sure.
like happened for that one season of After Moses. Or I use some very real world geography, but that's spoiler. But I also, in the opening of book 4 of After Moses, looked at surface maps of Titan for the Kraken methane sea of Titan, and the boat's chase accurately describes the coast of a real methane sea on Titan. And nobody in the world will ever know unless I tell them. But it's accurate.
Or we get there.
It'll be a while. It'll be a while.
So both the interior picture that we looked at and the maps feel very American. Can you tell us a little bit about fantasy? What kind of fantasy elements are we going to see? You said we're not going to see the serpents.
Right. Not this story.
Not this story.
Well, I don't want to tell you what the main things are, but I do reference a lot more things that I looked up, read a lot of Appalachian folk tales. One of the most famous ones, the Bell Witch. It's very weird. It's definitely weird and creepy. We're worth reading into. So I was like, okay, I need a witch. So the Witch of Hobomock Pass. That's not really a spoiler there. But there's a scene fairly early when something is something out in the darkness passes by the camp. 3 such somethings, and one of the soldiers on patrol sees it. And of course, they're having a conference, and the hunter is there, and he's talking about some of the things that it's probably not. And I think he says it's not a snallygaster or a dwyer, and it's not a talipo. And of course, all of those are real cryptids in the Appalachians and area. Snallygaster's kind of a chimeric dragon type thing. Dwyo's this dog-like enemy of the snallygaster, and the talipo is definitely a story you need to look up and read because it's definitely unsettling and involves this weird cat-like thing that talks and burns a guy down in his house. And yeah, very Appalachian. So for the most part, I'm treating American stories and folk tales as true, not tall tales. Tall tales are a little different than folk tales, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So we're not talking like
giant blue oxes
and things like that, right? We're talking more folk, older, basic. So tall tales, American tall tales are exaggerated recreations of folktale type stories, right? It's a deliberate recreation from like 1870s or 80s of earlier style things, but much exaggerated. So I'm trying to clear towards earlier things. Excuse me. Another thing, mysterious lights around a mountain. seeing that, just unexplained. That's there's a real mountain that there's perpetual stories about that in the Appalachians. So I lift a lot of things wholesale out of Appalachian folklore and just drop them right in. So I don't want to spoil too many things, but
Sure.
a very low magic setting. I joked on Twitter a couple months ago that the American wizard has a gun.
Yeah.
Right. So you're not going to see a wizard shooting fireballs, but you will see Joseph McKee, a hunter with a kind of a strange past, who has an extraordinary gun. So the story is set right at the transition from muskets to early rifles, but Joseph McKee has a one-of-a-kind custom piece hand built by Hezekiah Reaper. It's an early revolver rifle. So 5-chamber revolving rifle, uses early percussion caps, this really fancy thing. And we're told in the story that a rifle like this doesn't easily miss for one who's earned the right to bear it. So perhaps Mr. McKee, the hunter, is somewhat of a wizard in the setting, but an American wizard who carries a gun.
Wizard, yep.
Yes. Which I do have so someone else that helped with this. I don't know if you know Darren Hatfield. He's an author around Twitter. I don't know if you've read any of his books. I've got one. I haven't gotten to it yet. Nothing Ever Happens on Main Street.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, he does illustration and design work, and he did a concept art piece of this gun for me. It blew me away. You can kind of see it a little bit in in that artwork of McKee. It's not a close-up shot. We'll get a close-up of this gun because it's important to the story. But that was someone else that helped out along the way that he'll get some credit for.
Awesome.
Darren's a good guy. I like Darren.
Okay. The next image we will look at is the cover. You guys watching will have to provide your own drum roll because I do not have sound effects. So, thank you to everybody who is in the chat. I see you commenting and I appreciate you all. So, there's the ebook cover. Yes. That looks great.
There's a weird extra line on that version. I guess I need to go edit that picture. Yeah, it's okay. So, we'll talk about it in a second. Well, she's got some other shots.
I do, yeah.
Jordan Holt did these covers too. They are gouache paintings. So gouache was one of those fancy words I'd only ever seen written and had never heard it pronounced, so I didn't know what it was. It looks kind of like gouache or gouache. Yeah. It is Italian. It is a opaque watercolor, water-soluble paint. So it works very similar to watercolor, but it's a lot darker, a lot heavier. You can apply it thicker to be more opaque like that.
Okay.
So this is a gouache painting, and he did a digital, color grade at the end, since he was, it was scanned. But the title is hand drawn as well. It is not a font. I had a font that I like that he kind of based it similar, so I can still use that font in like marketing and other things if I need to and be close. But that's a completely custom title.
We have hats and guns.
We have hats and guns and something lurking in the darkness behind. Lots of fog. There's a lot of fog in this story. Fog and mist is key to Appalachian stories. Lots of moss and wet. And it's always cold and dark. And them are bad hills.
The eyes are actually kind of subtle because you are drawn to the characters in the foreground.
You're drawn to the people that are being lit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I see that line on there. I'm going to have to recreate this picture.
I'm going to move. I'm going to move to a new one. This is the mock-up of the wraparound cover.
Yeah. So I will say for the people it drives nuts, this does not portray any specific scene in the story. This is more of a mood and the things and settings and characters of the story. But yeah, the eyes are great because I've had several people tell me that, oh, I didn't see that at first. And then you see it and it's like, well, that's kind of an important detail. That's kind of an important detail back there. You guys paying attention?
Well, everybody is like everyone's looking in different directions.
Yeah,
We've it's almost like well, you can't really tell if they're being hunted or if they're doing the hunting or but like
a
you
little bit of
feel
both, maybe.
that like we've caught them just before the confrontation.
Right.
So
And then we have the more ominous backside.
yes,
We have
very
the
ominous.
character there. And another detail people don't always notice right at first is beneath the character of the witch there. You see another something lurking with red eyes.
So this like my little banner is like pointing right at it.
Yeah.
Very cool. Here, I'll switch to this next one. Doesn't have the mock-up, it's just the art.
Yeah. And I wish you could see the like 300 megabyte version of the picture. Like the resolution is absurd. Like you can zoom all the way in and see like canvas texture and
Oh
individual
man.
grains of painting. This compressed down, and made small to use doesn't give it justice. So it's going to look good painted at 300 DPI.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because there's a lot of good detail in it.
Very different style.
Very different
from After Moses.
Yeah. I went from cold, high contrast, high saturation digital science fiction to soft gouache, a lot more what's the word? A lot more stylized the word I'm wanting to use is absolutely wrong, so I'm not going to use it because it's the wrong art style. I'm not an artist. But yeah, it's just a lot softer. It's not, and also it doesn't have one of the key defining things of After Moses's art style was a lot of negative space.
Yes.
That much white was really kind of risky, and just doing nothing with all that space. It works. It worked. It pulled out, but there's a lot of unused space on these front covers. That's all. Every bit of it's used. That's the painting goes beyond the margins of the book. It's bigger than will show up on the cover. So, yeah, very different. Very different.
Which would you say you like better if you had to choose?
I don't think there's a. It's right for the story and the setting. If I was doing cold silhouettes like this with that high saturation and digital gradients and stuff like that for this story, it would be wrong, right? And a gouache painting like that for After Moses would be just as wrong. So it's definitely been fun. It's definitely been fun going, okay, there's someone painting with real paint that feels a lot more permanent than layers in Photoshop that you can always go back and change the base layer. You can't change the bottom layers once you get 5 layers of paint in. So, but I'm happy with how it turns out, and especially once you get to the physical mock-ups. What's the next one? You got anything else on this one?
Well, I'll pull from the chat here. Patrick gave us an air horn. Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate you. Friar Jeremiah Cowren?
Cogren? How does he say it? I don't know.
It says that's awesome looking. Blake Carpenter says nice. Very, very appreciative. It looks great. He says cawhorn.
Cawhorn. Okay, that makes sense. Now I know.
Okay, this one is the in progress shot that you sent me.
Yeah. So I put together this little collage, and this will appear on the most of these appear on the Kickstarter page, but you can see the first rough sketch in the upper left there, kind of just a layout sketch. And obviously in pencil, it looks very different.
It does. It
You know, and the
almost
layout
looks
shifted quite a bit.
like the colors made it look like they were two very separate spaces. That
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
red tunnel, you know.
Right, right,
This
right.
feels more like the uh the supernatural could be just on the other side of the tree, right?
Right, right. Well, and in the main in on the actual main one, it's separated by the spine, you know. So while it
Right.
is one piece, they're opposite sides of the book, so you don't really usually see them at the same time.
Right.
So there is a separation that works within the piece.
Yeah, it looks great.
And so then you've got on the right side the and I think I think that's a mostly done or all done. There's a little more that was fixed up, but that's a mostly done painting one, and you can see the scale. Look at the paintbrush up at the top or that pipe up there.
It's
Jordan takes
quite big.
great photos of his work in progress. It's quite big, yeah. Um, so it's shrunk down quite a bit for the book to pack all that detail into, you know, commercial printing detail. Uh,
Nice.
and then you can see, you know, all his lines that he drew out for the lettering, you know, as he's spacing everything and working on proportions and all that stuff that I would not be able to do. That's not quite, it's not, I guess it's not 100% true, is that I can fight through design, but it's entirely trial and error for me. I can tell when something is right, I just don't know how to get there. Whereas you can tell looking at what Jordan's done there that he clearly knows the design principles and how to reach balance and get there. So
So what did
yeah,
this design process look like? Like, did you hand it off to Jordan with like a
yeah. So
vibe, or were you like, did you have like a
we
very
talked
structured idea of
we
what you
talked
wanted?
about that stuff. I kind of sketched out something that I thought might work, and he said, "What do you think about this?" and had a completely different sketch, and I was like, "Yeah, that's better than what I sketched. How about you just trust your instinct and go with it?" You know. And there were a couple of other slightly more refined sketches than that first one, or ones in between that and another. There was one more sketch.
Sure.
There was some. He did some color studies where he basically took the picture of that and then in Photoshop threw some different colors over it to kind of create some different moods. And we looked and talked about those. One of them was this. This is very much like a kind of like a moonlit scene almost. It's like a bright moon shining through the trees almost, right? Uh, the other one we were looking at was really like golden light coming through. It was like sunset. It was like dusk. You know, that created a very different feel. And it looked
Sure.
really cool, but I ultimately decided for the little colder look rather than the warm one.
Yeah.
But I mean, even if I'd gone with the completely other look, I still think it would have looked like it would have been a great cover still. But yeah, this I've had to give less direction to Jordan than any other artist I've worked with, which is great, you know,
Nice.
because he's very talented. He knows his stuff. So
Uh, Going with real art in our current AI context is a very intentional choice.
it is, it is.
But you even decided to go with physical, like traditional media, as opposed to digital. Would you say that was more of a choice based on the genre, or were you
All of the above. I
sure?
mean, all of these things kind of come together. You know, we live in the AI world where everything visual is fake now. Just about everything can be faked. You know, for better or for worse. It's like I don't care if people are making AI memes and jokes and stuff like that. That's fine. I don't really care. I don't really care. You
No
know,
one was
I'm
making money making memes before.
right, right, right. You know, and I don't recommend it, but I understand when authors slap an AI cover on the book. I get it. You know, artwork, good artists can be very expensive. You know, you can pay out a lot of money for stuff. And for hobbyists that have no expectation of even necessarily getting a few $100s back, I totally get it. I don't blame them. I don't recommend it. I recommend against it. There's some pretty good research that's showing that Gen Z really doesn't like AI imagery, or Gen Z and Gen Alpha. In Gen Alpha slang, since I've already referenced Skibbity Toilet tonight, sorry everyone. In Gen Alpha slang, calling something AI, it means calling it fake. So AI has taken on, in that very youngest, was it like 16 and under, kind of is where that Gen Alpha is. So teenagers calling something AI right now is the same thing as calling it fake, or it's like, that didn't happen. That's AI. If someone tells us, so it's, and there's also some some research showing that youngest group is really good at picking out AI photos, even of the really, really good, high quality ones that are much harder to pick out. We're not talking about the ones that have the yellow filter that David is always trolling people on Twitter. Anytime, like, yellow filter, yellow AI. I love how he does that, by the way. That cracks me up. So I don't recommend it. I don't think that's I don't think it's the wisest way to go. I don't blame authors that do it, because I understand, especially if you're hobbyist. And I'm not even a Luddite about this. I use AI 3 or 4 days a week for research and administrative and other purposes.
The
But I
AI
don't.
likes Michael, okay? I tried for like hours to find a particular meme using I think it was on Grok. Yeah. And then Michael types in the same prompt when I shot to my Discord. I cannot find this. It immediately came back.
I screenshot Katie's description from Discord of the meme, pasted it in Grok, and said, "My friend needs help. Can you find this meme?" Boom! Immediately.
I argued with it for like half an hour. No, that's not it. It looks like this. I'm like describing it in great detail.
So I don't I don't like AI as an end medium, right? I think there are great uses for it along the way, but not for an end medium. Like, so one thing that I used AI for in the process of writing this was, after I had a finished first draft, I gave Grok the first draft, and I said, I said, this is a novel manuscript. Time passes. There are references to the months passing and moon and things like that. See if you can find if I made any errors in the passage of time. Right. And so Grok took thought for a while and produced this chart of a bunch of the places that, and found that I had made some errors in there, in places. Oh, you said it's this month. It's probably actually this month. When I go back and I look, like, yeah, okay, that's probably right. After that, I actually had a human beta reader that wanted a chance to read it. I said, will you, when you read through, make every note of this? And she read it, and she made an Excel chart of every reference to the passage of time and found the days that I'd missed. Right. But, AI is good at sorting existing information, but being able to ask specific questions in natural language that those of us that are not programmers could not possibly approach a computer to get that data out of it. Mm-hmm. So there's uses like that. I don't like the guys pumping out a novel a week on Amazon, because they're just crapping out AI novels and all that. It's frustrating. It's tiring. But that's the future we live in. We don't get a choice. So it's like, here we go. Let's do it.
Yeah, as a reader, I see no reason for me to pay someone else to prompt the machine for me.
I want to pick up deliberately pick up an AI book sometime, and I want to look at it from like a technical standpoint and see just how pervasive those tells are.
Sure.
Just out of a curiosity thing, I want to approach one and say, all right, let's look at this. Let's go. Let's do this. Let's rumble. But I haven't done that yet. I got too many more important things to read right now than to do that. So yeah, so all that stuff is brewing, and so I like physical media. I was like, that's a good idea. And then by the same token, Jordan's a little further towards the anti-AI than I am. He doesn't like using it for other things, and he was talking about how he's really trying to get away from Photoshop and digital art, and is trying to move back to doing all physical. He says it makes me better when I do just physical. It's easier to do in Photoshop, but it doesn't hone my skills the same way.
Sure.
And I was like, with that combination of just thinking about AI, him saying that, him being from Appalachia, I was like, okay, let's do this. Let's bite off some bullets and do some uncomfortable things and get a gouache painting.
It looks great. Looks fantastic. I think the last thing that I have that I'll just leave up is the mock-up of the hardcover that you sent me.
Yeah.
Looks great.
So you'll notice those golden edges. So I'm gonna get the under the hardback is gonna just be a cloth green book, but since it's gonna match that title, I'm gonna get gold gilded edges.
I'm so excited for this, you guys. I'm definitely getting the hardcover.
A couple of bling things. It's not one of those, decked out special editions where it's got everything everywhere, But you can get those things if you're gonna buy a few hundred copies at once, and that's another reason I'm doing this Kickstarter is to, help buy a few hundred books at once, and hopefully it does well, so I can buy a few more 100 books. And because let me tell you, that cost per copy goes down a lot when you're from buying one to buying 500. Economy of scale is magical.
Okay. I think that's all that I had. So I am going to pull up our questions from the audience. Corey, go ahead.
I was going to say before the end too, I should shoot through kind of like the basic things on Kickstarter that you can, like the tiers, the things you can get.
Yeah, we should definitely do that. Corey asks, does faith or religion play as large of a role for the characters of the Witch of Hobomock Pass? I'm assuming he means in
in contrast to After Moses.
Yeah.
I'm going to say not yet, although it may play a little more later. After Moses, this is the spoiler I never mind telling people, but after Moses, it's you're following this gunslinger, and you find out that he used to be a Catholic priest, right? And so his journey of how he got to where he was is obviously a huge part of the story. I don't quite have a character that's in that position here. There's certainly there's a Baptist chaplain along with this military company, and the general, the father, is one of the main points of view. He has several conversations through the book with this friend of his, because a military officer obviously can't have have friends in the same way in a situation like this. And so this chaplain is kind of the one person that he speaks to more on as an equal. And so there's certainly some of these elements involved, but for now it's a little less direct. Something else I didn't really say about the series is I know how it ends. Let me say it that way. I know how it ends, but I have no idea how many books until I get there. Because I might discover other fun things about the American frontier and say, I have to tell this adventure about this specific part of the Rocky Mountains where they were doing this. I don't know. Right. And so I intend it to be It will probably be quite a few. I might be writing this for half the rest of my life. I don't know. Shorter books, but I intend it to be a generational series. And so uh, I intend to talk about Nathaniel's descendants and John's descendants and some generations going down as we move west into other frontiers. So that'll allow me to move on to other things. So there may be some stories that are more deeply about Christian things specifically, other than some of the secondary themes that are involved here. So not quite for now. That's the answer to that. Not quite for now, but there may be in other stories.
All right. R.K. McClure asks, what was your favorite bit of research for this project?
Probably the Jacktails. I think I mentioned that earlier. The Jacktails were really fabulous. If that is at all interesting, if you go to Amazon and search for the Jacktails, the volume from the 1920s, the dialect in it is fabulous because they were orally transmitted stories and they were recorded as they were orally transmitted. It was a lot of fun to read. Really, it should be read aloud. That's what the folklorist who's in the forward is actually saying is the proper way to transmit these stories that you read in this is to read them several times, memorize the general shape of the story, and then tell them aloud to your children, because that is the manner in which they were transmitted. And so that is the ideal method for you to retell the story and to transmit it. So
Fun.
it's fun. It's fun. I had a lot of fun with it. I picked up of those little dialogue tags for Mr. McKee, and definitely worth the effort.
Selenite, the rock lady,
Mm-hmm.
asks, what was the most difficult part of this story to write? And also, what about in the After Moses series?
This one, I think it might be some of the dialogue and language things. I'm trying to not use modern turns of phrase and idioms. I wish I had a few more of those. Dogging his trail was one of the real ones that tripped me up until I found that. Because I just kept reading and it just kept feeling modern, and I just kept having to pair and shift and really work on McKee's voice especially to make it work. So that was really difficult. I think it's turned out okay. I'm pleased with where it's at. It's not a recreation of period speech or accent, but more I guess what do you say, a pastiche of it, where it's kind of recreating the shape of it so you feel that it's, General Nathaniel Lockridge speaks a little more formally, a little more clipped and tight to his men. McKee's laconic and relaxed and has a few unusual words. He uses the predecessor to ain't, ant, en apostrophe t, and some things like that. So that was probably what was the hardest thing to write? And for After Moses, the hardest thing to write for After Moses, I think with After Moses, it was became just such a sprawling tale by the time you get to 6. There were so many characters across the 800,000 words that preceded Evensong that I wanted to close off as many of those stories as I could. And there's a few characters that return in Evensong for small parts to kind of shut down, kind of put a period on who they were, that I'm really kind of proud of. They didn't have to be there, but that I just really enjoyed doing. So I guess tying back all of those myriad of threads together to try and I've always described plot writing to me as you start with the big plot, and then it splits into a few, and it keeps splitting until the middle of the story. And then at the middle of the story, you start recombining all of those plot threads until at the end you should be at the main original plot thread. The first plot and the first problem and the last problem. There, now we're centered. The first problem and the last problem should be the same, right? You solve all the interior ones first. And so just the whole process of tying that big of a story completely back together, especially, like I said, I pull back some minor characters, so there's some fun stuff in there with that. It just took a lot of thought.
Yeah.
And to make it all feel so satisfying, because again, endings are dangerous these days. People are fed up with bad endings, so you have to give satisfying endings, and I think I did. And it's funny. Okay, so here's a complete admission here. I don't think I've told this story publicly, but there's an equivalent of a last big hoorah and even song, and a bunch of people come to help with something, right? And there was somebody that was going to be there that I just completely forgot to write them in until after I was way into editing. I was like, oh, I forgot to bring that person. Oh, well. They didn't need to be there to like finish a story or anything, but I was like, oh, yeah, I've been planning on that. Oh, well.
Whoops.
Oops. Guess they didn't come. But it would have been more like an Avengers portal scene, if you make sense. Not everybody that walks through that portal has to be there, but it's still there for to be cool, right? So it would have been more like that. Not
Jeremiah, is
oh
it
no,
Cowhorn? Is that what he said?
Cowhorn? Oh no, I've forgotten.
I apologize. Was it difficult to shift gears from sci-fi western to frontier fantasy, which we touched on a little bit? But
I don't really think so. I think I think there's enough similarities, and I still kind of approach it in some ways like a sci-fi writer. When I thought about this, let me just say this up front before anyone freaks out. This will never be part of the story. Never be part of any one of these books. But when I started researching about, I was like, or I started thinking, okay, the compass is point west. I was like, is it plausible for there to be a large-scale magnetic anomaly such that an entire continent, the compass is going to point in one direction? And that was a rabbit hole. And let me tell you, there's a lot of very unlikely things that would have to happen. But yes, it is plausible. A lot of fluid core dynamics and all sorts of stuff that way beyond any kind of scope here. So don't worry, this doesn't turn into hard sci-fi. But I did just want to say that it's plausible.
It could happen.
It could happen.
Patrick from Cave to the Cross asks, what is the difference between a self-insert and bringing the values you want to showcase into your story? When does it become cringe?
Oh. Okay. Self-insert versus the values that you want to show. I think the self-insert is always unrealistically right and never struggles with the cost of those values. So for instance, something that I think you should always do, and there's a place in After Moses that I think I failed this, and I'll never admit where it is, but I think you should always steel man the view that you don't hold. So basically, you're not setting up fictional characters of this is the person who has this stupid point of view, and I'm just my character that thinks just like me is going to knock them down. Right. That's not a story. That's that self-insert that he's talking about of, well, it's just like me and it's there. Where you should set up the ideas that oppose those characters, even if your characters agree with you. You should set up the people that oppose them to really present the strongest form of that opposition, the most rational form, the most thought out, the most philosophically sound opposition to the values that your characters hold. Not just so that they'll be believable, but also because that protects you from that cringe self-insert when your enemy's not a fool, but is actually an intelligent, rational person who I'm not saying they're making good points that you should believe what they say, but they're not just, like I said, this straw man for your heroes to knock over and give their speech about what their values, and the other guy caves. So I think that's an approach to answering that question. I don't know if that's what he's looking for, or certainly not the only answer, but I do think that protects you from the cringe, is steel manning your enemies. And I think there's a place in After Moses where I don't think I steel manned my enemy well enough. I'm just going to leave it at that. Years later, thinking about it, I'm like, I didn't do very good on that spot.
Dave Mitchell asks, was it difficult to shift gears between such different genres?
We've kind of touched on that, and no, had a good time, good time writing this.
He also asks, when did you start working on Witch? During or after Moses?
After I published Evensong at the end of November, and I started the manuscript of Witch of Hobomock Pass like January 2nd. Took me about 2 months for the first draft, and that's about writing it. Remember, this is a shorter novel. After Moses, it's like 1/3 of an After Moses book. Remember, so that's about at the same writing speed. It would take me about 6 months of straight writing for an After Moses. So that's pretty comparable writing speed.
Last one. God, you guys are gonna laugh at me, but I don't know how to pronounce this. Is it Sir Gawain? Gawain of Camelot. I know that this is something that I've read and not ever said.
Gawain, depends on how authentic you want to be with your Middle English.
I really should just be more confidently American and just, just...
Most English teachers will tell you Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.
Okay.
Gawain is closer, and I think Gawain is actually probably the most period accurate, but that sounds terrible in English.
He asks, how do you come up with ideas for your novels? What led you to write this story?
So I talked about some of that, just thinking ideas. I'm very much some of these things come about very much based upon just what I'm thinking about at the time. Or, like the After Moses stories, I had rough penciled in of each story very early, what each novel was basically going to be about, and that didn't change. But sometimes the thematics within the story changed based upon the things that I was thinking about, and just things I was reading and experiencing at the time. Like Virtus, is about this revolution that goes wrong, right? And so it was always going to be this civil war situation. But in the process of writing, one of the ideas that comes out is the fact that revolutions are just really dangerous, because I present this story of there's two guys that are leading up this revolution, and one of them is the right guy and one of them is the wrong guy. And well, it turns out that the wrong guy is almost always the more violent of the two and will therefore win the power struggle. Right. And so some historical kind of philosophical things about revolutions were in my mind as I was approaching it. And so those naturally kind of come into the story. And random things I find interesting work their way into stories too. So I can't tell you how many things ended up in After Moses because I found out they were cool. Like the fact that, like the no spoilers here, but the fact that Phobos is considered possibly one of the moons of Mars is considered a rubble pile, which is just like this loosely gravitational held collection of rocks with a thin crust over it. So it's not that like dense and sturdy and solid, almost like something traumatic could happen to it. And that is the ending of Wormwood. Because I found something real. I was like, oh, that's cool. So yeah, whatever interests me, basically.
All right. That was all the questions that I have from Twitter, X, whatever it is now.
French, didn't you want to know my middle name?
Not really. I'd like David's ideas.
No. I like Elijah the Middleborn's was Michael Femur Breaker. I can tell you that somebody guessed it though.
Oh yeah.
Yep, someone guessed it. It's not
Big.
Femur Breaker.
It's not female.
Nope.
I thought, with the red hair, some sort of Viking family name. You said femur breaker. That seems. Patrick says, follow-up question. Which characters like Bombadil and is the Jesus representative like your other books?
You're Patrick a terrible human being, Patrick.
Also in our book club, and if you would like more context for this question.
The source of immense comedic.
I've made several shorts where he features. Well, he's the star, really, of my entire show. Thank you guys in the chat. I really appreciate you being here and for commenting and interacting with us. I am going to spin a wheel. Let's see if I can share my screen. This one. Double check that. Yeah. Okay. Share. All right, looks good. I think I have everybody on there. I am going to run it. Where's the button to run it? Maybe I just click it. Yes. Super complicated.
Whoa.
All right. Congratulations, Corey. I will reach out to you on Twitter since that's where the commenting was going on, and I will get your email and then I will send that to you. Thank you guys all for
Do you want me to
questions.
talk about the you want me to talk about the Kickstarter campaign real quick?
Yes, absolutely. Please do.
Okay, so the usual, the tiers go up, Kickstarter campaigns work how you get cheap to stuff that only people with a lot of disposable income might go on, and that's just how you go. There will be ebook versions available. There will be paperbacks, even though I really want you to get the hardback. Past that, the tier that gets a little bit of stuff. It has a hardback, a bookmark, and a 1.75 inch metal coin. It's a Republic of Columbia coin that commemorates Hobomock Pass. So it's like either kind of like, think about like a commemorative, like historical site coin. And so that's kind of what it is. I kind of envision, assuming this goes well and I do more of these, to do some more locations, kind of like as a series of these coins for fun.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah. So those are the main things. Fairly simple on the goods. I do allow. And that's the other thing for that tier. If you get all that stuff, there's I'll do like list in a thank you page in the hardback of all the people that supported at that tier. They're settlers.
Nice.
So all my tiers are friend tier themed. Past that, because I'm really pushing for the art, having the art, I have tiers that let people patronize a half-page piece of art where they will be credited as the patron that funded that piece of art, if that makes sense. Nice. And they'll get a print. And then there's a more expensive version where they'll be able to get the inked original version of it. So basically be the patron for an illustration in the book, and you get the original pen and ink version to keep.
Oh, cool.
So, and then I also have a full page one. So just a patronize and get a print, or the most expensive one is, patronize and get the original full page, which will be like, it's like twice the page of the book. So it's like 16 by 10 on a 16 by 10 piece of paper. So,
Fun.
again, since my goal is funding the illustrations is the main, funding the illustrations and funding a larger print run, I was like, I'm gonna just give people the opportunity to be patrons of the arts. You know,
Nice.
there's some folks out there with more disposable income than me. You know, so maybe they want to step in and say, yeah, I'll do this. I'll be listed in the back as the patron for or this piece of art on page 145, chapter whatever. So
Nice. Nice. Patrick asks, how do I get mine signed?
I'll sign all the hardbacks. I'll sign all the hardbacks I ship out. So
Nice.
I won't sign the paperbacks, Patrick. So you have to buy a hardback. But that's my general rule for if you buy a book from my website, I sign all the hardbacks and the paperbacks aren't signed. They just come as is.
Nice.
So
I think that's fair.
yeah, and I don't really charge more for it. So it's just if it passes through my hands, I take the effort to do it.
All right. And you were saying that the Kickstarter that is going to launch tomorrow.
It should launch tomorrow morning. Everything should be ready to go. I need to look at that ebook picture that had those strange lines on it. You pull that up and I'm just like, oh, there's something else for me to do tonight. So I'll take a look at that and everything should be ready for me to go. I should just be able to hit go sometime around 9 Central and it'll go through the month of July. And yes, that was another reason I wanted to write this. I totally forgot. One of the main reasons is I want to do this now as opposed to something else was it's the 250th US birthday. I couldn't get it released in time for that. Story about the American myth, but I could scramble madly to get the Kickstarter together.
Nice.
So it'll run for the month of July. Hopefully start tomorrow morning and run through July 31st.
Cool. Great.
I think that is everything.
Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for being in the chat. Currently, our book club is reading Tales Before Tolkien. Michael Kane has not been able to join us yet because he's been madly scrambling.
I've been busy.
But the first couple episodes of our discussion for that is up, and we'll be doing another one shortly, probably in the next couple weeks. And if you are interested in Patrick's hijinks on that, I've made lots of shorts, so it's not a huge time investment. You could just watch a few of them, get a feel for the vibes, and then pull up a full length.
my favorite two of your shorts are definitely the being genre savvy.
That's a good
know
one.
What genre you're in, and if you saw Bigfoot, would you hit it with your car? Patrick, who would definitely hit Bigfoot with his car.
Yeah, he would. Yep. You guys all have a great night. When you log into your phone or computer tomorrow morning, check that Kickstarter link and back the Witch of Hobomock Pass.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
Have a great night, guys.
Mm-hmm.